You know that picture we all have in our heads of the founding fathers? A big room, powdered wigs, and everyone leaning in with a quill pen to sign the U.S. Constitution. Well, it turns out the story isn't quite that simple. We're about to dive into the fascinating and kind of overlooked story of a man who was right there in the room, but whose name is completely missing, Alexander Martin. And that's the real mystery here, right? This guy was at the absolute center of power. I'm talking a decorated colonel, a respected lawyer, a two-time governor of his state, and a U.S. senator. He was in Philadelphia for the Constitutional Convention. So why didn't he sign? What happened? To get to the bottom of this, we first have to appreciate just how much of a big deal this guy really was. So let's start with a quick look at his resume. I mean, just look at this thing. It is totally stacked. He's got a Princeton education, which back then was super rare and prestigious. He had a successful legal career. He commanded troops in the Continental Army. Then he gets elected governor of North Carolina multiple times, and later serves in the U.S. Senate. This is not some minor character. This guy is a true heavyweight of his time. And here's a fascinating little wrinkle. He wasn't the only one. Turns out, out of the 55 delegates who actually showed up, a full 16 of them don't have their names on the final document. But Martin's story is really unique, and it tells us so much about the complicated, messy politics of that era. So to really get why he acted the way he did in Philadelphia, you gotta understand the man behind the name. And let me tell you, he was way more than just a politician. He was a soldier, a scholar, and believe it or not, even a poet. I mean, his life story is pretty wild. He starts out as this brainy scholar from Princeton, then he heads to the frontier of North Carolina to become a lawyer. The revolution breaks out, and bam, he's a man of action, leading troops in some major battles. And then, somehow, he finds the time later in life to publish a patriotic play. This was a guy with some seriously diverse talents. But, his military career wasn't exactly smooth sailing. The Battle of Germantown was a total mess, fought in this blinding fog. Super chaotic, American regiments were literally firing on each other by mistake. And in the middle of all that chaos, Martin, the commanding colonel, found himself facing an accusation that could destroy any officer's career. He was put on trial for cowardice. But, and this is a huge but, he was acquitted, totally cleared. Now the whole thing exhausted him, and he did resign from the army, but instead of just fading away, he pivoted right into politics, where he was about to become more powerful than ever. Okay, and this is where his story gets really interesting, because while he might have had a rough time in the Continental Army, back home in North Carolina, he was a political giant. Just look at this number, 2. That one number tells you so much. That's how many separate, multi-year terms Alexander Martin served as the governor of North Carolina. To get elected once was a huge honor, but to be so popular that they bring you back for a second go-around years later, that tells you just how indispensable he was to his state. And you can literally see his legacy all over North Carolina today. As governor, he was a key player in founding the University of North Carolina. He was even the first president of its board. He also oversaw the creation of Raleigh as the permanent state capital. The man wasn't just governing, he was literally building the state's most important institutions from the ground up. Okay, so we've got this picture of him as a total political powerhouse in his home state, right? Which makes what happened at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, well, even weirder. And luckily, we have this incredible insight from a guy who was right there in the room with him, a fellow delegate named William Pierce. Here's his take. Martin was a good politician for sure, but no speaker. His real talent was for the behind-the-scenes deal-making and political maneuvering, not for giving these big, dramatic speeches. The convention floor just wasn't his stage. And yeah, the official record totally backs this up. While other guys, the Madisons and Hamiltons of the world, were on these powerful committees drafting huge chunks of the Constitution, Martin's role was pretty small. He was there, he took part, but he wasn't a major player in the debates. But there's another crucial piece to this puzzle. And boom, here it is, the other big reason for his quietness, straight from the man himself. Martin actually explained in a letter that the entire convention was operating under this super strict rule of secrecy. He believed their ideas had to be worked out and molded firm for the public eye before anyone talked about them. So he wasn't just a quiet guy, he was a disciplined guy, and he was following the rules to a T. All right, so let's lay this all out, step by step. How did we get here? First, he wasn't a big debater to begin with. Second, he took that secrecy rule very seriously. Third, and this is key, he actually left Philadelphia in late August before the final document was even finished. And then, the final twist. He lost the election to even be a delegate at his own state's ratification convention. He was the only one that happened to. Suddenly, the whole thing starts to click, doesn't it? So, what's the takeaway here? How are we supposed to think about this guy, Alexander Martin? It's pretty clear he wasn't a founder in that classic mold of a Madison or a Hamilton. No, he was something else entirely. It's like his career was a tale of two completely different arenas. In his home state of North Carolina, he was a titan, a governor, a founder of major institutions, a true state builder. But then you look at Philadelphia on the national stage, and his footprint is just so much smaller. And that contrast is everything when it comes to understanding him. His political label, well, it kind of explains everything. He was what we'd call a moderate federalist. So yeah, he thought the country needed a stronger central government, but he wasn't on board with the super powerful national vision of guys like Alexander Hamilton. He was really representing the more independent, maybe even skeptical spirit of his North Carolina voters. And that caution really defined how he acted on the national level. So here's the big idea. Maybe we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. Maybe the real mystery isn't why he didn't sign the U.S. Constitution. Maybe the real story is about everything he did build and create back home in North Carolina. His true legacy wasn't about framing a nation. It was about building a state. And that leaves us with one final big question to chew on. Alexander Martin's story really makes you think, doesn't it? It forces us to ask, in our focus on the guys who framed the nation, have we kind of overlooked these other crucial figures who were busy building the states that actually made that nation possible? It's a question worth thinking about.